everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The GOAT.
Right.
Come back.
We need like a Jim Brewer. Do you know who Jim Brewer is?
No.
He's a comedian. He was actually on Saturday Night Live for a little bit, but he has a character on there called the Goat Man. And like, it's hilarious. So we actually need to have a segment of like, welcome back with the Goat Man, like voice. That'd be awesome.
You know what? I see that as our purple cow. That could be really big for the GOAT. Hey. So welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, overcoming challenges, what it takes to be a GOAT, different types of GOATs. But last week, we had somebody on, Cam F. Awesome, that I got to tell you, I was pretty amazed with his story.
Yeah. Oh, very. It's
Man.
like it's the way he describes certain IQs and knowledge of like life skills to a degree instead of going to college. You know, I think that a lot of people miss that because we do learn from life. If we actually learn from life and apply it to our goals and get to places, those are the stories that, again, I think that no different than a college degree, help people as apprenticeships and mentorships and helping the next generation learn from each other. And I think that's very important. So that was a big point that I picked up from him last week for sure.
You know, me too. I got that when he's like, so I figured my 6 national championships, all the work that I put in equals a college degree. And I'm like, you know what? That really makes sense because he is using his gift of being a fighter. Now he's speaking at schools and doing things for kids and helping them see that, you know, getting out of victimhood and you don't have to stay in that mindset. And I was so impressed. I totally had a riot during that show.
You know, us as performance coaches, you know, there's so many pieces to what we do for athletes, but it's also so transferable into life.
Oh, yes.
Just the synergy between the two, all the interconnectivity is just amazing because you learn so much in competition that really can help you in every aspect of your life. And that's why we do what we do, is because it brings such impact to people, I think, and inspires people.
I totally agree. And it affects, like you said, Travis, it's like every aspect of your life. We're always competing. We're always trying to get better. We always want to. It's like taking classes and going to school and you're competing with everybody in the class. You know, it's like, I got to get a better grade than them. I got to do. So I don't care who you are in our life, in our world. It's a competitive environment out there.
Yes, it is.
And if you're not learning the skills, it's going to give you advantages or help you to take advantage of situations. You're doing yourself a disservice, I think.
Absolutely.
That kind of echoes what part of the conversation today was going to be is, you know, that's the side of competition where you're competing with others to be the greatest or the best. But then there's an internal conversation with your circumstance situations and how you're going to face the day. And I'm excited about that conversation we're going to have today. It's going to be great.
I know. I can't even remember this lady's name that's coming on. We have no contact with her. I won't even go into it's Travis's girlfriend.
Oh. Yeah. Yes. Now you did not put me in the doghouse by that, I hope. So.
No, I am so excited with Angie Hundley. It's her story and what I read about her. I can't be more excited to get to hear what her journey has been like and how she ended up at this point of the journey with you, Travis. I mean, man, I can't wait to hear that.
Really, so at the end of the day, just like he stated, the internal battle that she fought inside herself through the many years, through foster system and through abuse, and you'll hear her story and I'll let her tell it, but just taking all of those difficult, negative situations she was surrounded with and finding her inner strength to say no to those situations and I will rise above. And it's no different than doing that on the football field, on the baseball field. I'm going to take this negative situation and I'm going to turn it around. Right. And it's only me. This world owes me nothing. And so if I want to take it, I got to go out and reach and grab it and get it. And that's exactly what she's done. Right. And it's proved successful for her in her own personal life as a mother, as as a business owner, as now an author, and just used all that information as a platform to help other people. And it's just beautiful and amazing what she's done. So,
And we're talking about goats at a different level.
Yes.
We're playing basketball and you happen to be better than your opponent. That's one thing. But if you're talking about life or death or decisions that could kill you or situations, and being able to thrive through those and be able to come out on the other side with a positive attitude.
Yep, absolutely.
I am so excited to meet Angie. Let's bring her on.
Welcome.
Hello, Angie.
Hello.
Did I already blow it?
No, I just feel bad for him because he's probably like, oh God.
Well, I got the opportunity to make him feel like that, so I took it.
I want to explain that one later. No, I'm just kidding.
Angie, we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really cool. You guys are talking about coaching, and I was just sitting here listening to you guys talking, and like I never really did a lot of sports in high school growing up, and having a coach in your life on a mentorship level like you guys have all done is really cool. But there's also people that are just life coaches that are like mental coaches too. And so I think, and sometimes we have to be our own coaches, and it's really hard to figure out like where you need to find that. And I've had people often tell me, was there one person that inspired you through the course of your life? And I reflect back and I think it was my grandmother. Which obviously she wasn't a coach.
Right.
She's almost 92 years old, but you look at somebody else that has gone through struggles in life, going through the Great Depression and living on a farm and being a wife of 7 years or something like that to a farmer. Like, you see somebody that goes through challenges, and it's easy to want to emulate a lifestyle where people admire you, so that's kind of cool. Different level of coaching, of course, but.
Well, and that's true. I mean, coaches come in a lot of different packages. We're performance coaches, there's life coaches, there's executive coaches, there's all kinds of different types of coaches.
Yep, it's very true. It is.
So, Angie, the people here on the outside don't really know about your story and the recipe for bad lemons and all that. I would love you to tell your story if you don't mind, and we'll chime in once in a while when we have some questions. But I would really, from what I've read, I would really like to hear your journey.
Yeah, sure. So about 6 years ago, well, maybe closer to 7 at this point, I always knew that I wanted to give back in some capacity because I was in foster care as a child. And so long story short, and I talk about it in my book, I have 2 sisters, and my mom and my dad had gone through a divorce, and my mom had this new boyfriend that she moved into our home, and very quickly, as a matter of fact. And it was probably within just a few weeks after he moved in that he started sexually abusing my sisters and I. And laying in bed one night, and he just comes in and wakes me up and takes me back to my mom's bedroom and him, and where they shared, and introduced me to adulthood, which I was scared, but as a kid, you don't know what to do. You just, he's an adult. And, he threatened, if you tell anybody, I'll kill you. He had a knife, and you can't tell your mother, I'll kill your sisters, I'll kill your mom. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And,
how old were you, Angie?
So I think I was thinking about this 5.5, maybe 6 is when it started. Yeah, somewhere on that timeline, which is crazy because I have 4 children of my own, and I just can't even fathom what it would be like. But that went on for, I would say, maybe 8-9 months between my sister and I. And my sister and I were 1 year apart, and my little sister at the time was in another room because she was maybe a year old at the time, and Super's 2 years old. But my mom would work nights as an LPN at a nursing home. So she had the graveyard shift. So we'd get home from school, and he fed us dinner and took care of us. And I think she essentially needed him to care for us because she didn't have anybody. And so, yeah, it went on for a while. And then, he took turns between my sister and I, and one day at school, I get called down to the office. Actually, my teacher had sent me to the office to grab something, and so I'm standing in the office, and I could just tell something felt off. And I eventually get called into the counselor's office, and then she's like, "Have a seat." And so I go and I sit down, and she's like, "Hey, I've already talked to your sister, and I kind of know there's some stuff going on in your household that doesn't seem normal, but I'd like to hear your side of stuff." And I'm thinking, wow, my sister just unloaded our family secret, so I let it all out. And really, my sister hadn't said anything, but what had happened was that my sister had gotten a transmitted disease from him. She was having a hard time going to the bathroom. She expressed some pain to the teacher. The teacher, calls my mom, and my mom just comes and drops medicine off, doesn't act concerned, doesn't say a word, and just leaves. And I think it threw a red flag up.
Yeah.
And so they started asking my sister some questions, and my sister was like, I can't talk about it. I want to see my sister, like, was wanting me to come to the classroom. And so that's how they got me out of class. And so they told my sister, like, "Hey, we'll get your sister out of class. We'll have you talk to her." But I mean, it just, the whole scenario itself threw up a huge red flag. So I am thinking that she already told the counselor everything. So I unloaded all about the nights in the bedroom, and my mom doesn't know. And I can't even imagine the counselor at that point listening to all of that. Like, as a mother now, if I had some little kid tell me that, I would have been a mess. Just knowing that, oh my God, this is happening. But that day, so my sister ended up joining me in the counselor's office, and we sat there all day. That night, after school was out, my mom shows up, cops are there, social workers are there. I mean, I had no idea what to expect from that.
Right.
But I'm my mom walking in the front door, and I'm thinking, okay, it's so cool now because she knows. So she knows this is all going to get fixed. She walks in that school. She is belligerent. She is cussing. She is mad. It was the craziest thing ever, like, to see her in that capacity. And we ended up getting taken away, like, right away. Because I think everybody in that scenario was like, these kids are going to get out of here.
Right.
And so literally the social worker takes my sisters and I, and we go in a cop car that night, and we went to our first foster home. And so we were all in the same foster home for about a month. And then my little sister, one day we're all getting home from our new routine of school, whatever. And I see the social worker come up, and she had come routinely to check on us. We'd go into the office at the building they had there, the facility, and we would talk to psychologists and talk to her. And you really don't know what to expect as a kid when you're going through all of that.
Right.
But so she pulled up that day, and I remember that day was probably one of the hardest days of my life through all of that course was because they came to take my little sister. So here I watch, like, I'm the oldest. I've got two younger sisters. And, at that point, I didn't know what to think. My dad, my parents had gotten in a fight. My dad disappears. This new man shows up. Then my mom, all this stuff's going on with her. I still had not really had a chance to visit with her a whole lot about this situation. But then now they're pulling my sister away. So I remember that day thinking, what is happening to my family? Like, my dad's gone. Now my sister's gone. Like, where's everybody going?
Right.
And, but she went into a separate foster home that night. And ultimately they ended up adopting her. My sister and I, that are a year apart, her and I shuffled around for, it ended up being a total of about 18 months before I ended up getting adopted. And we all three got adopted in separate homes. And so that was the hardest part, is when, one by one, everything shifted. But I think the mental checkout for me was probably about 8. And I got adopted just about 2 months shy of my 9th birthday. But my mental checkout was, and I remember it very specifically. We were in visitations with our mom at the social work, or the KVC building. And I remember being in a room with my mom and telling her, because she kept telling the social workers we were confused. It was really our father that was doing this stuff to us, not the boyfriend. She always justified that it was not the boyfriend. Always protected him, didn't seem to protect us. And I felt that energy from her, and it infuriated me. Yeah. Because for me, I just kept being hopeful that she would take care of things. Like, I knew what the stipulations were as a child. I knew that they were waiting for her to get rid of boyfriend. They needed her to get counseling. I knew that those were the stipulations that she had to go through to get us back. And even though I knew the lifestyle we were living in, complete poverty, just, wasn't ideal, that was all I knew.
Right.
And I remember being hopeful that, okay, this time she's going to get it figured out. Boyfriend's going to leave. She's going to do what she's got to do. But that particular day we were in there in our supervised visit. I think I'd hit my breaking point. And I just said, it is not our father. It is your boyfriend. Like, we are not confused. And she just looked at me and this blank stare, just like, well, there's nothing I can do about it now. I was done.
Right.
It was like everything that I had felt, all the hope that I had had up to that point. I knew it was done.
Right.
And I think that was probably when I hit my mental checkout. I went through depression. I went through suicide. I get to a point where I'm like, my own mother doesn't want me. So
Right.
as a child,
You're
should
9.
be
Wow.
right. I mean, I'm 8 years old at that point, and the one person you think you should count on in your life should
Right.
be a parent. And my dad was already gone. And I found out years later, my dad, he freaked out. I remember he would come try to see us. My mom would have him arrested. But you have to understand, back in the 80s, when parents got divorced, mom always got the kids, dad got the weekends or whatever. And so it tore him apart when he didn't get to see us girls. And so he would try to show up to see us, and my mom would just call the police, and the police show up, somebody goes to jail. Well, mom says dad's not supposed to be here, so dad goes to jail. And so my dad had reached a point where he was like, he just stopped trying.
Yeah.
And so again, my dad's gone, and then now my mom's checked out. So as a child, I felt like nobody wanted me.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with me that nobody
Right.
wants me? And so I went through that. I remember going through psychology appointments. I remember going through psych evals. And I remember I was really struggling there for a while. Like, I really just felt like I didn't understand the purpose of life. I'd been introduced to sex in a way that nobody should be introduced to. And so I went through a real rough period there. But I think ultimately it was a blessing that happened, because I think by the time I'd gone through all those psych evals and talked to psychologists and psychiatrists and so forth, it was a highly recommended scenario of, she cannot go back to this lifestyle. Like,
Right.
she's not going to make it. And so I think that's probably what a judge ultimately needed to see in order to make his decision, which was to terminate my mom's rights, because up to that point, the focus was rehabilitating her,
Right.
get rid of the boyfriend, go through counseling, which obviously at 18 months, she didn't want to do that. It was obvious.
Right.
And so I was very grateful, like looking back now, that I can recognize that even though I went through that mental checkout, it was probably a blessing. It's probably what ultimately got us to the point where we were able to be adopted.
Right.
And so otherwise we probably would have lived through the system for years and fostered out, and Lord knows what would have happened. At least we got homes.
You couldn't continue to feel, because like you had you were feeling all these rejections and hurt and pain and all these things. And if you allowed yourself to continue to feel, you're right, you would have killed yourself or been a bad.
Oh, I would have had no reason to care, because nobody cared for me.
Right.
And so I think that was good. And even though I got adopted into not the most ideal situation, my sisters, they got placed in these middle-class homes. And I got placed in a trailer park with a single mom. Well, really not even a mom, because she had never even had children. And so I remember there was a point where I'm like, why did they get the better homes? Like, why did I get put in the trailer park?
Yeah.
But again, I look at it like it's probably good that I got put in the trailer home, because it made me work for everything that I've gotten.
Right.
And to be able to look back and reflect on that and see where I wasn't really handed anything.
Right.
And there's something about that freedom to look at everything you own around you and recognize that, wow, I've worked for that. So yeah, so we ended up getting adopted. Many, many years later, I always knew I wanted to give back in some capacity, because I felt like, even though the foster care system is not ideal, there's a lot of issues in it. It did save me in a sense that I had a roof over my head. I didn't have to worry about being shuffled around. I mean, there were nights that I didn't know from day to day where I was going to sleep. And I would fear it. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I had anxiety, because I'm like, okay, it's tomorrow the day, the social worker is going to come and I'm going to have to go to so just having that sense of security of knowing, okay, I don't have to be moved. I don't have to worry about packing my stuff up in a trash bag and worrying about going to a whole new family, trying to get acclimated and, tell your story one more time to somebody that feels sorry for you. I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I just wanted to fit in and feel like I was normal.
Yeah, have somebody care.
Right. So that was probably the hardest part. But many, many years later, I'm like, I want to give back. I want to help. I want to help other kids that may be going through some of this, that may have the same feelings, that don't know what they're wrestling with, that maybe I can, infuse some life into them and share like, hey, on the outside, you may see this businesswoman or this mother, but there's a whole side of this that I'm just like you. And so I did some mentorship through Wyandotte County for a little bit. And then I met with a KVC social worker out of Johnson County. I brought my adoption book to her and we were wrestling through the pages, looking through the stuff. And she was just floored. She's like, I cannot even believe that I'm looking at this because these are the exact same forms we give our foster kids right now. 30 years later, the exact same things. I'm just like, wow. And we talked that morning and we talked about the success rate of foster care. And she's like, there's a 5% success rate of children who have, if they've had any time in their life where they've been through the foster care system, they've got a 95% chance of failure. And I remember I could not sleep after I heard that. And it just, I can't really say like what came over me, but I'm like, I've got to do something. There's got to be something that I can do to fix this number.
Yeah.
And I wrestled with it for a long time. And so I was like, maybe I'll write a book. Maybe I'll share a book about my experience. Maybe it'll resonate with somebody. And that's really where the whole book idea even came from. Over the course of the 6 years following that, life, business, kids, move, whatever. I'm like, I got to get this book finished. And so the course of the book changed in terms of, I really started capturing scenarios that could relate to not just foster children, but maybe it relates to somebody that has suffered from PTSD, or because I know that I've experienced that. Yeah. Maybe it can relate to somebody who's gone through a divorce, or maybe it will resonate with somebody who has decided to research their adoptive family and what that encounter is like. Or, I had a cancer scare at one point through that time. So just any one of those pieces, bad lemon scenarios, maybe that will resonate with somebody to where it will impact them in some capacity. And even if I've impacted one person, then I've done my job. Right. And it's so hard because I was warned about the vulnerability hangover and I didn't really understand what that meant. And now I do, in a sense that when you project the negative aspects of your life, no matter what they are, you always have critics. You always have somebody that wants to dissect that. And for me, being such a humble person and going through the majority of my life, not really talking about those experiences, even my closest friends from middle school and high school, who kind of knew I had a little bit of a different childhood, but didn't know the aspects of it, were floored when they read my book, when it got released, because they just couldn't believe all these years, 20 plus years that they had known me. I never once talked about those experiences. And they were like, how have we known you? And you've never shared this. And for me, it's because it didn't define me. It may define my choices and how I react and respond, but it doesn't define me as a person. And I never wanted anyone to feel sorry for me or to look at me thinking that I was broken. And I wanted them to look at the aspects of what I've accomplished, not, what I had to go through. And so that was very important for me.
Angie, do you know though that I get that whole second part, like I'm moving on and I'm going forward, but your story is what people can relate. Well, not relate probably, but can feel. Mm-hmm. And you telling your story and letting us see that, holy crap, she had that happen.
Yeah.
And look at her. She's cool. She's healthy. She's got a good life. And it's like, that's what goats are, is, the more trauma, the more pain we have in our life, a lot of times it allows us to truly be happy. The happiest people that I've ever met in life have usually had the most trauma because they know what it's like on this side.
Right.
And they're here now. And it's just like,
I think that's so true. I mean, I look at life so differently. I look at it like it could be so much worse. and I know because I've experienced it.
Yeah.
And it's easy for me to look at life as being more full versus empty because at one point I felt empty.
Oh, yeah.
And I also look at it like when I meet somebody, it's weird for me because I feel like I automatically assume they probably have some challenges along the way too. And it's like an internal empathy that I share with somebody that I don't judge.
Right.
And in Travis and I've had this conversation before too, in a sense that like, I don't have the capacity to judge at the level that others do because I don't have a reason to. Like if somebody heard some of the things that I've experienced, they could easily judge me as a person. But again, it didn't define me. It may define how I react, but it doesn't define me. And so how can I judge someone for what they've done or what they've been through when we've all have our own challenges that we've gone through? So what's the point of making that judgment? So, and it's given me a better outlook on life and how I perceive things because I just assume that everybody's gone through those things.
Right.
And so
that's such an interesting point. One thing that I really pay close attention to is the fact that she literally looks, because she had to do it her whole life, literally looks at every situation on a daily basis and tries to turn something bad into something good or using it as a platform to learn. And she does that throughout her life with her kids, with her business, with her friends, with me, everybody. She's amazing at doing that. And if we all could just take kind of a lesson from that and find the good out of everything that's bad, it just provides an avenue for more joy, for more peace in your life. So, and that's great how she's able to do that. I've never, ever, ever known anybody who can literally take every bad situation and find the good in it.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Like it's so easy to find the negative in something. We all do. Oh yeah. I mean, just turn on any TV, check your email, whatever. It's everywhere because people feed off of negative energy and it's insane. Yeah. But behind every negative aspect, there's something positive. There just has to be. And sometimes we don't always know what that is right away, but then we find it later. And you have to actually dive into it to understand what it is. And not everybody has the capacity to do that. And I recognize that. Right. Like when I post a lot on my Instagram and my Facebook, pictures of hearts. And I've had people ask me what is the deal with you and these hearts? And I explained, I'm like, well, how often do you walk by something, look at something? What do you see? Perception is everything, but often you look at something and you don't see it unless you are looking for it. And for me, I'm looking for happy. I'm looking for healthy. And so when I see a rock that looks like a heart or gum on the street that's been flattened and it's in the shape of a heart, how do you not look at that and just smile and be like, wow, there's a heart, and you have to be looking for that. And so often in life, we're looking for things to be wrong. We're looking for something. Right. And if you look for it, you're going to find it. And for me, I just choose to look for happy. And so it just fits me, I guess. But it's really cool. I'll get emails and people will text me pictures all the time of their random hearts that they'll find. And it makes me feel good because that means that I'm infusing that in others to look for it. And if you look for it, it's there. So
Angie, that makes me smile. And that leads us to the GOAT tip, which is exactly what you and Travis just said. It's like you have the ability, according to what Travis has said, to find the good in everything. Mm-hmm. And you've had to. Your life proves it.
Yes.
It's like having those fears and always worrying like you were talking about, and am I going to be moved? You were put into fight or flight a lot. Mm-hmm. And the trauma that you had. So it's like being able to, how you respond to situations is our only strength. And you had to figure out how to respond, not like a victim. Mm-hmm. And that's hard.
It is, as I was writing my book, I was sitting there thinking about each scenario that I talked about. And looks like we're going on a tour with Travis.
All right.
Oh,
book.
Oh yeah.
Yay.
But as I was reflecting on it, what occurred to me is that every situation in life, we go through this why phase. Like, why is this happening to me? Why do I always find whatever it is, like, why do I always have somebody approach me with this, or why do I always end up having these things happen to me? And really, it's not about the why, but it's about how can you take those whys and reflect on them and make you a better person, look at it in a different perspective. And so instead of wondering why something happens to you, how are you going to take those lessons that you keep encountering and make the most of it?
Learn from them. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so people don't understand that. And whenever I have people come to me and say, I've got this going on, I feel like this always happens. And it's like, well, okay, well, this is always happening. So why is it always happening? How about you look at why that's always happening and how you can take those scenarios and apply it to something different. And when you take every why and insert the word how in there and you get into problem solving mode, then you can fix it, but you cannot fix what you don't acknowledge.
I like that.
Right.
And that's really what it comes down to. So all the scenarios I talk about in my book, I've taken the why, like, why did my mom abandon me? Instead, how can I be a better mother? How can I be a mother to my children that I did not get and that I want to be? How can I have a better relationship with my children that I didn't have with my mom? That's the real true impact there. Same thing with, going through a car wreck. Why did I have to go through a car wreck and, somebody had to get killed? Why can't I drive my car? Instead, how am I going to get behind the wheel and celebrate the successes of being able to drive again? How am I going to embrace the freedom of having a vehicle to be able to get myself around through life? Every scenario has that impact. You just have to look for that. And that's so hard for some people. And I feel I've been blessed with a gift from God that I have the ability to recognize what the why is and turn that into the how. And once I figure out the how, I'm smooth sailing, but sometimes it's not easy making that conversion. And I don't even realize I'm in that why phase. And then once I recognize I'm in the why phase, then it's like, okay, wait a minute, stop, time out. Okay, how am I going to fix this? And then I get in fix it mode. And once you're in the fix it mode, that becomes the focus, not the why. And that really is the power of the mind.
It definitely takes you out of victim thinking.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
She often says, Jeff, a lot of times, and I use it all the time. She says, if you change nothing, nothing changes. And I mean, you can apply that to literally everything in life that as part of your struggle. So many times we focus on what happened or what's going to happen, as of focusing on where we're at right now and how can we manage where we're at right in this very moment. And I tell you the lessons, there's so many lessons from the story, from Angie's story, that just apply across all sectors. And I can't say it enough with our athletes that we coach and that we work with. This is so transferable to them.
Oh yeah.
And because it is, she's right. It's mind.
It's resilience. It's the ability. What you've been through has taught you how to be resilient. Good or bad, it's taught you how to be resilient. And you chose to learn those lessons and use them. Most people struggle, like you said, struggle with that. That's why we fall into the victim thinking and poor me, and this always happens to me, and why did I not get that house and all that. We go there. But you have been able to turn that around and use it as your weapon.
It's very true. I remember, a few years ago, my business partner and I, we were looking for a location to move our business. Our lease was coming up and we knew we wanted to get into a larger facility. We were growing and we had this facility that was in the town that we were in. We fought the city like no other, spent so much money, having architects come in, engineering come in, fought city, the planning and zoning commission, and we just kept getting denied. And I remember my business partner was so upset and mad, like, I don't understand why this keeps happening or why they keep denying this. And then for me, I looked at it like, there's a reason why this is not supposed to happen. There's a reason why we keep getting rejected. And then we found this property here in Baser. And at a first glance, it was a house sitting on a hill. It had nothing. It was zoned commercial because the lady was using her garage as weekly garage sales or whatever. And when we first looked at that property, we both kind of laughed because we were like, how on earth is this house ever going to benefit a business? But we went back to that facility. It's on 6 acres. And all of a sudden we saw this creek that ran behind the property. And a light bulb went off for me where I'm like, okay, well, our business is Oak Creek. There's a creek that runs back behind this business. There's something about this property, no matter if it's a house, that it's ours. And we never would have even considered that had we not kept getting rejected with this other property that we had our minds set on. And for me, I kept trying to tell my business partner, like, there's a reason why this isn't going through. And he was right, because we end up getting a better property in the end. Anyways, the town that we have our business in is growing rampantly. And so we're able to be a part of that growth, and we've got our business sectored in that. And so again, everything happens for a reason, but sometimes we're so in tune to push something because we think in our minds that's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
And if there's a reason why it's not happening, what is that?
Right. Angie, I want to thank you for being our guest tonight. You are amazing. Your story is amazing. And I would like to let the world know who you are so that they can learn the lessons.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Book. Hey, Travis, next time I see
I'm
you.
excited to read it.
Yeah, I've got some copies. I'll get you a copy.
I love it. And just a little bit of housekeeping that I want to, next week's guest, we don't have right now, do we?
No.
We're going to find next week's guest. I've got a couple down the road away, but next week we're not sure who it is. All right. Then I want you guys to go to our Facebook page. Everybody out there, Damien has been doing a really cool thing. Damien, tell them about the parenting Facebook group that you're doing and what you're doing for it.
Pretty much is parenting and athlete, helping parents understand their role with their pretty much supporting their child in their sports career, but it's also for any sort of kid that's going under pressures to perform. So some of those are social pressures, some of those are going to be in actual drama club or debates or being in theater. So it's not just an athlete that the parent is over, but the holistic approach of how, again, do I help my child versus fix it all the time, but how do I support that child in making decisions, goals, and really, not put pressure on them to perform because that's usually what happens.
And I know the last group, it was yesterday, right? I thought that was great. What was your topic?
Live with me. Well, the next 6 weeks, starting 2 weeks ago, has actually been pre-game, in-game, and post-game parenting. Just different tools and tricks to help your child, before a competition or a theater play or whatever they have to go perform in, how to help them when you're there so that way you're not a humiliation to them from the sidelines. And then, of course, what do you do after a failure or a loss, and how to teach your child some bounce back techniques.
Love that. I think that, and it's so cool, folks. I really highly recommend that you join that group because he's got a lot of good information on there also. So, and just a brief message about who we serve. We basically at Triumph Performance Institute serve people that are here or want to achieve something at a higher level, no matter what that is, whether it be sports, whether it be overcoming an addiction, whether it be doing better in your business. We want to help people to perform at a higher level. So if you are struggling, you need some encouragement, coaching, give us a call or reach out to one of us, Jeff, Coach D, or we got Travis at triumphprogram.com also. All right, guys. Thank you so much for the show. Anything
Angie,
you want to wrap up?
Meet you soon in person.
We love you, man.
Of course, it helped too. Thanks, guys.
You bet.